Hello, my name is Rachel Cook. I'm a product manager with Engineerica Systems, and I'm so excited to give you an introduction to our innovative institution-wide cloud-based software solution, AccuCampus, for tracking, engagement, and retention. Engineerica Systems formed over 20 years ago when our founders, who were then engineering students and tutors at the University of Central Florida, were approached by their tutoring center director. And at the end of every semester, she told them it was taking her 2 weeks to compile all the paper sign-ins for the term. So she asked them to create a system that would track student visits electronically. And the program they created became the first version of Engineerica's tracking software, and its distribution quickly expanded to 3 major systems now used in schools across the country and internationally: AccuTrack, AccuSQL, and Academia. And as users requested more capabilities, our system became more mature. And over time, the software grew to include center management features that made it possible for any service to track, leaving them more time to spend with students. Features like visits tracking, appointment scheduling, media checkout, feedback collection, staff scheduling, and traffic analysis. But recently, we found a new gap. Many clients were taking our tracking data and feeding it into a separate system or process for retention and engagement initiatives. And we realized they could save a lot of effort and money if these processes were in one system, which rather than being used by individual centers, could be used by the entire institution. So we took what we learned over the past 20 years, streamlined and enhanced our features, and started over to build AccuCampus. Plus, we did something we weren't seeing in other retention systems. We added student-facing features. Let me give you an example of why it's so important that your retention system be student-facing. So here we have 2 roommates. We'll call them Marcia and Fatima. And lately, Marcia has been noticing that some things with Fatima are pretty off, and she wants to help. At a non-AccuCampus school, her options are pretty limited. Usually she can maybe go to an RA or a counselor or talk to Fatima herself, but these options might not go over very well or might not get the results that are actually going to lead to Fatima getting help. So at your school, are referrals just for faculty, maybe staff too? That's how we usually see it. But thankfully, Marcia goes to an AccuCampus school where certain referrals, or what we call action items, are actually available for everyone to raise. So Marcia takes out her phone and opens up her AccuCampus app, and she clicks on a referral or an action item called "My Friend Needs Help." And she writes, "Fatima has been stressed lately and is talking about hurting herself." That item is assigned to Fatima, though of course in this case we keep it confidential because it's a sensitive topic, and the appropriate area receives a notification to reach out to her. So most of the time, the students themselves are actually the ones who are engaging the most with each other, which makes them one of the best resources for raising alerts. So if your alert system doesn't allow for student involvement, you could be missing out on a significant portion of your troubled population. So the counseling center reaches out to Fatima with a personal invitation to a counseling session where they're able to assign other appropriate action items or steps for Fatima to take to help her get back on track. And she's notified when these items are assigned with instructions for how to complete these steps, which makes it easy to follow up, especially because everything's in that AccuCampus app or on our web interface. So it's both easy for staff to keep track of what Fatima needs, and it's easy for Fatima to get that help. So are you tired of dealing with paper referrals? Yeah, we see plenty of those. One school we worked with actually gives students a different piece of paper every time they get bounced from place to place to place. So they're going from financial aid to registration, back to financial aid, each time carrying a little slip of paper, having to stand in a long line, not really understanding what it is that they need. Another one of our client schools that was using a piece of paper, which had to be filled out by a faculty member every time the student received tutoring services. So the student received the piece of paper, they brought it to the tutor had to sign it, the student had to bring it back to their professor. So how much of that process do you think is actually getting tracked? What if they lose that piece of paper? And who holds the responsibility for follow-up? Is it the student, the faculty member, the tutoring center? There's no actual way to keep track of how many students are referred, and then someone has to manually enter that data somewhere. So we can do better. Our students absolutely deserve better. And you'll find many software solutions for referrals, but inputting of data is usually going to be a manual process that relies heavily on email or other methods of communication that just aren't as effectual. And with AccuCampus, the process is as efficient as possible and connects with your students to meet them on their level. Next up, we have Nick. Nick gets straight A's, he doesn't take out student loans, and every registration period he meets with his advisor to make sure he's on track to graduate on time. So who thinks we need to worry about Nick? Is he at risk? In a typical risk model, he's not going to be at risk. We're not going to think that we need to pay too much attention to Nick. But luckily, Nick goes to an AccuCampus school. So when he sits down with his advisor, she shows him his activity in the system. And it's pretty empty except for class attendance and, of course, trips to advising. And he thinks that's a good thing. He thinks it means that he's doing well. He's not getting bad marks. He's not getting referrals to academic honesty, for example. But his advisor says, actually, Nick, this is not great. It means that you're not involved. You're not engaged. There's so much more that you could be doing. They talk about ways that he can get more involved, and she assigns him some action items with specific instructions about how to take advantage of the resources she thinks he would enjoy and gain additional skill from. He's taken a lot of foreign language electives, so she assigns an action item to check out study abroad options. And his GPA qualifies him for the honors program, so she adds attend an honors information session to his action plan. The mindset that we need to cultivate is that all students are at risk. All students need engagement in order to stay not just in school, but in your school. AccuCampus gives you and your student the ability to assess where a student is, where they need to be, and quickly direct them there. This next story is actually about me. So before I came to Engineerica, I was a Learning Center manager, and I used one of Engineerica's products, AccuSQL, to pull data every term, and it was this really nice data, really good reports that I could give to my director. So I thought that I was doing pretty good. And one day, Institutional Research sent out an email to all staff at the college. And it was this big report with lots of great data from lots of areas around the college showing the positive impact they were having on student success. Only guess whose area wasn't on it? Yeah, mine. So what happened? Well, it turns out that IR was getting a lot of data from a lot of areas, and there was not one consistent way that that data was being collected across campus. Some areas were using paper sign-ins, some were using electronic tracking, some were using Ouija boards for all I knew. Not quite, but it sometimes felt like that. And I don't blame IR. They had enough work pulling that together, and some resources were just getting left out, including mine, because there wasn't a consistent way to get data from everyone. Imagine a school where every resource is participating and IR is getting regular, consistent data from one location. And I want to talk to you about how AccuCampus can help bring that relief to your IR department. So that sounds great, but we realized that even if IR falls in love with the system, it doesn't mean anything if your resources don't want to use it. And they won't if it doesn't give them the tools they need to manage their traffic effectively or take work off of their shoulders. So I'm sure many of you would like that or have center managers who would like that. So meet Elise. Elise works at a school that recently adopted AccuCampus. She teaches an open yoga class every week on the lawn, and she knows that her class is consistently well attended, but she has a hard time showing it. And at first she didn't take attendance at all. Then she started with paper sign-ins, but those were hard to maintain. And she knows AccuCampus allows for sign-in on a computer or iPad, but that's just not viable for her. She's getting nervous because if she can't show that her class is well attended, it could get cut. Then one of her colleagues suggests using the AccuCampus beacon. This little device, which is about the size of a large bottle cap, no more than 2 inches across, is going to make her life so much easier. She doesn't need paper sign-in sheets. She doesn't need to haul her laptop out onto the lawn. She just needs the beacon. And when her students arrive, they take out their phones, open the AccuCampus app, and just click Sign In. It's a 5-second process to connect with the beacon and sign in for attendance. So Elise gets her proof that her class is attended and the tracking is taken off her shoulders and distributed among her students so that she can focus on teaching. With multiple sign-in methods and center management tools, along with very enhanced security features, you can track sensitive areas like accessibility, large events with multiple entrances and up to thousands of attendees, advising with caseloads, and more. There really is no challenge too big. We have yet to find a location, service, or event that we couldn't track in AccuCampus. And that's important when it comes to getting the data you need to really make the most of your success initiatives. So I have a challenge for you. Think about your 3 most complex resources to track or include in your success initiative, the ones that have had to use homegrown tracking and management systems or their own separate system or nothing at all, and email me about it at rachelc@engineerica.com. I don't want your simple areas. I want to show you and them how to solve your issues with AccuCampus with tools that allow you to track, engage, and retain. Thank you so much.